This morning, I'll talk a little bit about and summarize that herd size crisis facing our ranchers, but how the ongoing investigation into our big four packers, what that means for the larger policy context, and certainly what it means for national security. Let's begin with the herd size. As of January 1st of this year, we have about 86.2 million head of cattle and calves in America. That is the lowest since the 1950s, and this year we're looking to be slightly down again. In the past decade alone, we've lost over 17% of our cattle ranchers. More than 100,000 ranches across this country are no more. The low herd size inherited by the Trump administration can be attributed to a variety of factors. The biggest one, at least from our perspective, is the radical left's ongoing assault against ranching as a way of life. For years, they used climate alarmism to wage a war on cattle in America. And when you pair that with droughts, wildfire, overregulation from previous administrations, and volatile markets, this is how we have ended up here today. Growing the herd size is an immediate problem in need of solutions, and we've already begun implementing across the government and into the states how we're going to solve for that. And we'll talk more about that as we move through the week. But already on the grazing allotments, we've opened up millions of acres in the West. We unveiled our new product of the USA, which is catching like fire across the country in a good way, labeling meat and poultry and egg products as the actually born, raised, harvested, and processed in America, which is a new rule, expanding the grading pilot program to include 88 facilities in 32 states. That's smaller processors, reducing holiday and overtime inspection fees for small processors, of course, encouraging our child nutrition programs. You all have heard me say over and over, USDA spends $400 million every day on 16 nutrition programs, incentivizing those programs to purchase locally grown, processed, harvested beef. And then, of course, Bobby Kennedy and I, with our new dietary guidelines, underscoring the importance of meat, among other actions, in eating real food. So we are making big change to keep incentivizing the growth of our cattle herd and to get out of this current situation we're in. However, and this is the second part of what I want to talk about today, the consolidation in U.S. meatpacking has led to just 4 meat packers: JBS, a Brazilian-owned company; Cargill, Tyson Foods, and National Beef, another Brazilian company. Those 4 companies monopolize about 85% of the U.S. processing market today. But it hasn't always been that way. The rate of this 4-firm control has accelerated since the 1970s. According to USDA data, concentration for cattle slaughter of these 4 was only 25% in 1977 and jumped to 71% by 1992. As mentioned today, it is an astounding 85%. Notably, these 4 firms now own together more than 70 subsidiary companies today. They don't own them together, but in total, there are 70 subsidiary companies that are owned by these 4. This has led to a frightening landscape for cattle ranchers. Industry consolidation reduces options for our ranchers looking to sell their cattle. It weakens their negotiating power, and it risks reliance upon a single buyer. Today, the concentration of larger plants opens the door to tighter coordination by the Big Four with producers, and perhaps the exertion of control over them as well, given they have limited options to sell their cattle. As ranchers face fewer options for selling their animals, the Big Four grow stronger and stronger. These companies now have an unprecedented ability to wield market power and influence prices paid for cattle, definitely more so than if we had greater competition. On top of that, half of these meatpacking giants, including the largest meat packer in the world, are either foreign-owned or have significant foreign ownership and control, making them a threat not just to our cattle producers, but a threat to America itself. And as time has gone on, it becomes more and more clear that food security is truly national security. One Brazilian-owned company holds roughly a quarter of the market and has a documented history of international corruption and illicit activity. The brutal reality is that such foreign ownership of meat packers has been affiliated not just with corruption, but also cartels and, as recent as last week, slave labor, which is bad enough on its own, but it's also to the detriment of America's great independent ranchers and consumers. Further, when just 4 firms control a market, suppliers and food prices are rocked heavily when disruptions occur. The last few years have proven that the protein sector, especially, and therefore our food security, is especially at risk when global pandemics, animal disease outbreaks, and facility issues like fires, labor disputes, foodborne illnesses, and cybersecurity attacks occur. As an example, in 2019, a fire at a Tyson slaughter plant in Kansas resulted in a 27% drop in cattle traded on the market just that following week. And in 2021, a cyber attack on JBS plants in the U.S. caused ripple effects and delayed production. President Trump is acutely aware of these challenges, as evidenced by his Truth Social directive last November, directing the Department of Justice to investigate the Big Four meat packers for potential collusion and price manipulation. Ensuring these practices do not happen will protect both producers and consumers. This also builds on our September 2025 Memorandum of Understanding with the Department of Justice Antitrust Division to identify anti-competitive behaviors with respect to agricultural inputs, as such consolidation isn't just limited to meat packing, even though that's what we're talking about today. But whether it's seeds and fertilizer and other inputs, the consolidation of agriculture in America has continued unabated for decades, and it is now time to take a very hard look and begin onshoring and reshoring, as the president has so eloquently stated, so much of what we do and produce in America. Just last week, a lot of you were at our press conference on fertilizer, where we certainly underscored the need to do that. The health and diversification of all of these communities, including the packing community, is vital to our long-term national security agenda. More U.S.-owned packers in more American regions of the country provides more opportunities for our ranchers and stronger food security for our country. This strengthens ranchers' ability to market their cattle in a way that makes the most business sense to them. When small and mid-sized processors around the country succeed, the communities they serve and the ranchers they support will also succeed. In closing, I want to reiterate that these efforts are part of the Trump administration's larger plan to make America great again and making agriculture great again. When small and medium-sized packers have a chance to compete and thrive, the cattle herd regains its former strength, and Americans across the country will gain. God bless our great farmers, our ranchers, our producers. God bless our incredible boss, President Trump, who's willing to bust the status quo whenever he believes it's the right thing to do for our country. And certainly there's been no greater partner alongside that effort than Peter Navarro, Director Navarro.